So usually when I give talks like this, I've been in this field, as you know, extremely long time. I've been in my same office as a professor on the Radium Hospital in Oslo, and for 50 years. So I've done a lot of things. And during that time, I have now, the last 3-4 years, I've been writing on 2 books. One is the one you have here, and the other one is a much bigger one about light and life. So that is more exactly to the point here, but it is yet not printed. It is just in the print right now. Usually when I give talks like this, I used to have a poem. But poems in English, well, I can cite for you If by Rudyard Kipling and such things that I can do, and I can tell you also, maybe I can tell you a joke to start with, because this has to be broad now. And the first step for a good speaker should be to make his people laugh. Yes? And I'll try to do that. One day, 2 of the most famous authors, poets of England died, and they came to heaven. And then said St. Paul, Peter, he was letting them into heaven, and they said, this is a terrible day, because so many people have died today, there's only one room left, and you have to make a poem, and the best one will get the room in heaven. But you have to do very difficult rhyme word, and the rhyme word here is that city in the middle of Sahara with a lot of sun. Yeah, it's called Timbuktu. And the first poet, he said something like, in sandstorms hot Sahara through, a camel went to Timbuktu. Okay? Not bad. I could feel the sand between my teeth, said St. Peter. Now, Mr. Rudyard Kipling, you have to do a good poem in order to get to heaven. And so he gave this poem. Tim and I through Sahara went and found inside the oh, something happened. So we have to start again. Wait a minute. Yeah. Must shouldn't do it. Yeah, okay, now it's it. Tim and I through Sahara went and found inside the tiny tent 3 naked girls. What could we do? So I booked 1 and Tim booked 2. I made you laugh, so that's exactly what I want. Then I have to switch over to a more serious poem again, and the most serious poem has to be something about light. And this is a poem I've written now while sitting out there, and it is rewriting of Walter de la Mare's wonderful, great poem about Napoleon. It's not about Napoleon. Listen now what I wrote here. Oh humans, what is life? It is I, the incessant light, the sunny sky, the fertile earth, the days so bright through which we go is I. Yes, so this points out the very important thing we are going to talk about, namely the light. Now, this is going to be a talk with, I have a fairly good time, I think. So I have to take you through something of life, something of the starting of everything, and the biology which is folded out under the sun. So we go. Many diseases can be cured with sun exposure, light exposure, even mental diseases. Let's go and see. Here is something in one of the big journals many years ago in the 1920s. So he had ultraviolet light shining on the head, and so he said, solar bath apparatus helps cure diseases of the head. Yes? Now, that was serious at that time, so people started to laugh at this, and now many people are again more serious about this one. So here is a list of the sun-sensitive diseases from A to H, 70. Not few. You can see here, Alzheimer. We'll come into some of this during my talk. Alzheimer, anxiety, atherosclerosis, bones, fractures, cardiovascular disease is important, and 20 types of cancer, different cancers, and so on and so forth. And the list is not that long, it is that long. It's the rest. So you can see that even that flu, type A of influenza flu, MS, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, pneumonia, rheumatoid arthritis, and schizophrenia can be prevented more or less by light. We will see. Here is a picture of how, and now we talk about light, the day of light, all this it can do. This is just to impress you. Yeah, this is a slide to impress people and say, this is not bad. So let's go on. Here we have 5 out of the many: osteoporosis, weak bones, and we have cardiovascular heart diseases, and we have diabetes, MS, and cancer. This is just to highlight a few of the things which is going to be main part of the talk. So humans have both worshipped and hated the sun. Now it seems like many people in this country are hating the sun, and they recommend people to go out of the sun. Some authorities try to rob the sunshine from us. This book came out in London a few years ago by one of my, no, not this one, take this one first. This is a story about Alexander the Great, the greatest warrior that ever lived. He ruled practically the whole world at that time. And so he came to Diogenes in his battle. He lived literally in a barrel, this Diogenes in Greece. Alexander was a Macedonian, 320 years before Christ. So he said to Diogenes, "Now I am a wealthy man. I can give you whatever you want. What do you want of me?" And so Diogenes replied, "That you step aside so that the sun can shine on me." And so this was written by my friend in London, Oliver Gilly. Sunlight robbery is exactly the same as has been happening in many, many countries. People are threatened out of the sun. So, but that has not always been so. This is from one of the most famous journals of the world in medicine, The Lancet. Solar radiation is so good for health that nudists should be awarded the best beaches. And so came one just before the war. He said that the sun protects against internal cancer via generating skin cancer. So during the war, Frank Appley said, no, that's not true. It is the solar radiation itself that protects, not the skin cancer, which is true. So here you can see the UV versus the sun. And now we can, this is one of the things that sun does, namely to make vitamin D. From the time from about April until September, it makes a lot of vitamin D. And you can see 30 minutes in midsummer sun gives you 10,000 international units. We'll remember that number during the talk, because some people, even here in Norway, they say that 10,000 is toxic, but no one has been ever poisoned by vitamin D by being in the sun. This is a third of a bottle of cod liver oil of Teran. Yes. So you can see that there are lots of myths going on. Life is developed in strong sun. We'll look a little bit wider now, and we'll look a little bit at that life. This is 700 million years ago, very long ago. Then you have these creatures called the coccolithophores, and they needed sun and vitamin D in order to make the shells, which is made of calcium carbonate around them. They are very small. They had to have sun and vitamin D. So when life crept out of the water, that happened at a certain time. It also needed sun, but even more, because they needed a skeleton made out of calcium carbonate of bones. And the light, sun, and vitamin D are linked to life itself. In Genesis 1, it is said, "Become light," and it became light. So lack of sun and vitamin D, has classical consequences, rickets and osteoporosis. That is the most important thing that all, even in Norway, all doctors know that. They know that. So that when I talk to the medical doctors like you, if you have been medical doctors, all of you, you would immediately nod, say this is okay. 240 suffer from osteoporosis in Norway. Overweight of women is among them. Risk increases after menopause. Worldwide, we have 200 million people suffering from that. 30% of all women after menopause in Western countries suffer from osteoporosis. So this is not little. Preeclampsia. Sun and vitamin D reduces the risk. That is proven overall. 5 to 10% of all Norwegians' pregnancies are getting preeclampsia. Yes. So we go again to history. Back to history. Did some Neanderthals suffer from rickets? You know, the Neanderthals disappeared about 27,000 years ago. And we came, called Cro-Magnon. Yes, the Neanderthals, they lived in a very poor, cold climate during the last part of the Ice Age. So they had to be indoor or in cave. And did they suffer from osteoporosis and rickets? Yes, let us see. Let us look at what happened. Here are some of their bones they find. And they found more than that. They found that they had food, practically only meat, no vitamin D. There was no sun, only 3 small fishes among this huge amount of animal food. Now, you and I, we are about 3% Neanderthals in our genes. So we have a little bit of the Neanderthal gene. 20 years ago, it was not known. Now it is known that we have Neanderthal in us, a little bit. Humans are developed in the sun. And we are developed in very strong sun, and that's here. There is a valley in Africa which goes northwards called the Rift Valley. And that is a place where the earth changes very, very rapidly. It has changed especially on the eastern side. On the eastern side, humans start to develop because there is development wherever in the world that the nature changes fast. Then development has to come because you have to adapt to the new climate. That is exactly what happened under the equator. You see, this is right under equator. So how did the different colors of the skin come about, and how is that linked up to what we know now? We know now that humans all over the world have dark skin when they live under the equator. Dark skin, even in South America. But you see that the humans, they moved northwards from Africa to us. And there was another link that went over the Bering Strait and down to America. And they have not yet been there more than 15,000 years. So they haven't had time to get completely black. But still, they are much, much darker than we are. So people that live under the sun, very strong sun, they are dark, and we are bright. There is a difference. Humans were first white, in the very, very, very beginning white. Then they turned black, and then when they moved northwards again turned white. And there are some key words here. To protect small vessels in the skin, which is the largest organ in the human body. And they had to make enough vitamin D. This is the reason why this is so. In Africa, it is to protect the vessels in the skin for overheating and also for possible from skin cancer. I don't know, but maybe. But moving northwards, we have to turn white, which we are when we live here. Here is how it is. So white skin was developed where humans moved northwards after coming from Central Africa, as we have. This shows that sunshine is healthy, because white skin lets in much more light from the sun than black skin does. So white and black skin, here is the difference between white and black skin. The black people who live here, they need 6 times more sun to get enough vitamin D. Therefore, a lot of black people living in Norway have too little vitamin D. Very poor in vitamin D. And it's even worse for those who use burqa and these things to cover up the face. So they are very badly off. They don't know how to drink cod liver oil. So it's not good. So now the transition from white to black to white has happened many times in the history of humans. Every time humans have moved northwards to less sun, they have turned white. Here's just a repetition of what I said. And there is a new and important story about light. And I give you just the words here, the key words for you to remember until we go to the last part of the talk. This is a word, it's called filagrin. It's a molecule in the skin. It's another one called resistin. It's the third one called brain-derived neurotropic factor. And there are also another one, which we will come to later in the talk. So I hope that you keep your eyes open. Here is again the skin color, how it is when you do it scientifically. You will find that skin color at latitude 0 around equator is very dark and gets bright when you move either southwards or northwards. When did our skin turn white? Yeah, this is interesting. White skin is developed where the sun is weak, where the food with little vitamin D accelerates this whitening. We stopped eating fish when agriculture came and domestic animals were easier to use. You know, that happened when humans came from the agriculture was developed in a fertile crescent in the Middle East. That we know. And it came to us from that place. At the same time, we got our Indo-European language. So our white color of the skin and our language has the same origin in the Middle East in the fertile crescent, which means halvmåne, den fruktbare halvmåne. Yes. So it maybe comes to something more about filagrin to this story. The story of light, life and health goes on. Light brings us messages. This is a little bit sidestep, but it is extremely funny to know. If we were 3,200 light years out in space, we would, by a big telescope, be able to see the Battle of Troy. And if we are 1,000 years out, we could see the Battle of Svolder with Olav Tryggvason and Einar Tambarskjell, who is here. So we could see it because the light hasn't gone further. There is nothing of the information we do now outdoor that is going to be away. It is there somewhere out in the space. So light shows us the magnificence of the universe. Here you can see something which you can see by the huge modern telescope called the Hubble's telescope. You can see extremely long and extremely exactly out in the world. Light shows us the beauty of the universe. Look at this one. So without light, nothing. This is the light that tells us the beauty. Here the light tells us the beauty of the sun during a moon eclipse of the sun. And you can see how the flames of light are coming out of the sun here. You cannot see that normally, but when you have an eclipse, the moon is covering the middle of the sun, then you can see how the light flares out. This is one of the first things I learned from my father when I was about 7 years old. He was very interested in this field. He was an agriculture man, but he was well educated in astronomy. So this is called protuberances. Yes. That is northern light. Another colleague of mine at the university is specialist in this. This I take with a northern light. This is sun, again, that shines particles, comes to the earth, and it goes through the atmosphere in the north and in the south, making this, not in the middle, but in the north and the south. Therefore we have something called northern light. So the creation was thought to be, by many people it was thought to be an important light was playing a major role. I think this is in Rome in this chapel in the Vatican, made by Michelangelo. See that God creates the world, and there comes light rays out of his hands, which is not bad to think of. Humans have worshipped the sun in different ways. We can take two examples I show you now. I show you an example 1300 years before Christ and one 1300 years after Christ. The Aztecs as last in South America, and Egyptians the first. Here is how Akhenaton, the first monotheist, worshipped the sun together with his wife, Nefertiti. They held up their hands to the sun, and the sun holds hands down to them, and the sun is giving them healthy, good stuff. They realized that in the Nile district of Egypt already at that time. So you can see how they worshipped the sun. So the Aztecs, they also worshipped, but they were very afraid. So that's what they did. In order to keep the sun moving, they took a slave or maybe a captive up to the top of a pyramid, and then they cut out by a sharp knife the head, the heart, and held the heart up to the sun to make the sun going normally. So this is a little bit more realistic picture of what they did. You see, it is terrible, but they did it in fear that the sun should stop giving the light. Light acts now on human beings, both via the eyes, and it acts also via the skin. It acts both mentally and physiologically. We'll come into both of these. I will not say so much about the eyes here and now, because there is obviously another one coming to give a lecture about the circadian, the rhythms, how to use light to readjust human rhythms for day and night. So I'm going to touch it, but not very deeply here now. Now, this goes as follows. This is now the extra skin way. This is the way that the sun, the light, acts on us via the eyes. Some time ago, about 5-10 years ago, we knew and we learned and we taught our students that the eye has 4 receptors. 4. One for dim light, very sensitive one, and 3 for the different colors. Therefore, we have color light view. So we had 4. But now it turned out that some people who had none of these 4, still light was adjusting their time of the day. How could that be? They started to make research, and it's a very fascinating story how they could find that. It is some new molecules which are in the retina here, called the intrinsic photosensitive retinoganglion cells. And there goes a special signal from these in the retina into the head here. It goes to something called the suprachiasmatic nuclei here. From there it goes further in different ways, and it comes up to the pineal gland. So the signal about light goes in our head. Even for some of the blind people, it goes away to the suprachiasmatic nuclei, which is the main clock of our body. If we have a tumor there, we lose the day and night feeling. So the supranuclear chiasmatic nuclei are important as a clock. And it gives the signal to the pineal gland, which is a very famous gland. Descartes thought at an early time in the 16th century, he thought that the reason, how can the body interact with the soul? How can body and mind interact with each other? It's through the pineal gland, he said. He was, of course, wrong, but nevertheless, he thought so. So the pineal gland, just in the middle of the head, has important ways to work. The main way it works is that it sends out in the night the so-called night hormone, the dark hormone, called the melatonin. Some people can use that for a sleeping pill. Take a sleeping pill of melatonin in the night, it acts as another kind of sleeping pills. So melatonin is high in the night and should be 0 or low in the day if you have enough light. So this is a bright story, but we go to the skin, and the skin is extremely complex. It is made of different layers, from the dead skin layers at the very top and down to the living skin layers at the very bottom. It's not thick. It's ordered of a few tenths of a millimeter thick. But nevertheless, it's the largest organ of the human body. And there are many, many types of cells in this living layer here. And the light can act on all. But light can act differently, because you see here is a magnification of the skin, and you can see that different colors of light, they reach different depths. The red light gets far down, and the blue light gets not so far down. And you can see that the red especially, and also the green to some extent, can get down all the way to the blood. And because the skin is so large, there's a lot of blood flowing through the skin. And in this way, the sun can act on our body via shining light on the skin. There was a very interesting paper coming out in Science some years ago. They shined weak laser light behind the knees, where you cannot see it. And they claimed in that big paper that there was a response in the melatonin. If you gave light behind the leg in the night, it responded. So this, they said, shows that the light works also directly on the skin. Whether that is true or not, it has been reproduced by a few scientists, but not by all. Some people don't find it, but nevertheless, I believe it's true. I believe that the sun acts on the skin as well. So let us take part of the mental story now. Part of the mental story, which is extremely important, I think, yes. Dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and cardiovascular diseases, they are linked in a way. The frequency of Alzheimer's in Europe is 60 years, 7%, doubled every 20 years, counteracted or delayed by sun and by vitamin D. The same seems to be true for cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases. And the key word here is clogged vessels. There is a north-south variations in many countries of these diseases, and always it is most common in the north. Dementia, sun and vitamin D. D vitamin protects the nerves. We'll look a little bit more at that. The D vitamin and the sun protects the nerves. Enough sun and enough vitamin D slow down the development of dementia, which take place with age for many people. Okay? Parkinson's disease is also not an uncommon disease. It's counteracted by solar radiation. The reason is that sun does the protection, and also vitamin D, it protects the nerve system. We are talking about nerve all the time. Now we talk about the cognitive, the thinking, the roles of thinking of vitamin D. Vitamin D is fat soluble. Nerve cells are embedded in a sheath of fat myelin sheath. And the nerve cells has, as many other cells, fat in their membranes. So vitamin D influences the transport of ions through the cell membrane. This is simply what we call nerve conduction. Thus, vitamin D modulates the nerve conduction. This is a rational, physical, biological way by which light works on nerves. But there is more than that. This is just about the vitamin D, which was the whole story 5 years ago. It's not anymore. We'll see that. Vitamin D and schizophrenia. Migration from low sun country migration from high to low sun countries increases the risks by 5 to 8 times of schizophrenia. Finland, they gave small children vitamin D in their first years, and it reduced their risk. Patients with schizophrenia are often born in early spring, and we'll look at that later. That's important. Rat babies given food without vitamin D get brain changes resembling those in schizophrenic patients. So vitamin D is definitely linked to schizophrenia. Here you see the conception rate of schizophrenic children. And you can see that this is the year from January until December on the bottom line. And you can see the conception if you have a April, May and June and July conception, the chance to get a schizophrenic child is high. That has something to do with the vitamin D level of the mother in a given time of the pregnancy. That level of everyone in much higher in the summer and autumn than in the spring and winter. So that if the baby has the right amount of vitamin D, the unborn baby, then it will be prevented from getting schizophrenia. Now we come to the modern one, very, very modern thing, called the brain-derived neurotropic factor. Translated to Norwegian, it's det är hjerneavledet nerveelskende faktor. Yeah. It's a protein that is linked to brain and nerves. It's recently developed, found, and it is important to have enough of that for preventing many, many diseases. You see here are all the diseases that are prevented or reduced in risk by means of brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is made by the sun. This is not a little. You see, it's a huge number of diseases here, a huge number. Dementia, depression, cardiovascular diseases, type 2 and type 1, even diabetes, obesity, colorectal cancer, and brain-derived neurotropic factor. Yes, okay. When that is going down, all these other things is dangerous. So here, sun gives, and light from the sunbeds gives brain-derived neurotropic factors as well. So here is how this factor varies in our blood during the year. You see it is low now, March, April, very low. And it comes up again when the sun starts to work. So we have more brain-derived neurotropic factor in the summer than we have in the winter. And that is a factor that is also made in the neighborhood of cells in the central nerve system. This means that if you have a damage, and all of us have damage of nerve cells as we get older and older, then it is repaired better if you have enough of that factor. This shows the relationship with light and the cognitive diseases, the mental diseases. This is one of the big things which is new. Season of birth and health, a story of light again. Spring, summer gives people, time of birth gives positive people. This is not very much different. It's some difference, possible to measure if you have many people to look at. Yes, summer makes unstable temperament. Autumn makes low tendency for depressions. Winter gives low irritability. Possible reasons: sun, hormones, D vitamin. How much sun did your mother get during her pregnancy? And here you can see that different diseases. The birth month is here, and it's very linked to the time of the year for all these diseases, even from seasonal disorders, seasonal affective disorders, Down syndrome, Crohn's syndrome, Alzheimer, alcoholism, schizophrenia, and so on. This is a big paper made some years ago, and it is more or less the truth. Season, sun and vitamin D. The level of vitamin D in our blood varies through the year. That was not the case in our original home in Africa. So let's look at that. Here you can see first at the right side here. You can see at the right here, you can see how it was in the equator. How it is in the equator. You have the same amount of sun all the year, more or less. When you go to Tromsø, at the bottom here, you have nothing in between April and October, November, September. You see? So that we have an up and down, up and down, up and down level of vitamin D if you don't go to the sunbed, or if you don't take pills in the winter. Here you can see on the left-hand side, you can see that there is a huge difference in vitamin D content in the blood of people during the year in all the northern countries. is Finland, D is Denmark, N is Norway. And yes, and you see that it's up to 100% more in the summer than in the winter of vitamin D in the blood. So between 20 and 120% higher levels during the summer than and autumn than during the winter. So you see that we have a yo-yo tendency, an up and down tendency of the vitamin D in our blood. We didn't have that while we lived in Africa about 50,000 years ago. No, we had the same level all the time. And what more, I will show you that we have much more vitamin D at that time than we have now. This is important to know, extremely important to remember, that there is an up and down. And why should that be so dangerous? Because vitamin D is related to a lot of hormones. For instance, to the sex hormones. What would happen if the sex hormones went up and down by 50%? Not good, of course. Unfortunately, it is modulated, it is leveled to some extent, not quite. Let's go to the autoimmune diseases. That is when the body starts to act badly on itself, to fight its own cells. Some acts against diabetes, some acts against multiple sclerosis. Both are important autoimmune diseases. So let's see. Here is the latitude dependency of multiple sclerosis. You see there is practically no multiple sclerosis when you live in Africa under the equator. But you get a lot when you get northwards and also southwards from that. So it clearly shows this is a story of light and health. Seasonal births with multiple sclerosis in Norway. You can see that there is a large seasonal variation here. Births that get to multiple sclerosis later are not born with the same frequency through the year. The birth is highest in April and is lowest in February. We go to diabetes 1, which is the most serious type of diabetes. Diabetes 2 is the same as the diabetes people get when you get old, but the diabetes 1 is the one which is inherited. And you see again, it is a latitude dependency. Very few have the trouble. No, very few have the trouble when you are born in equator, like this one here. Much more when you get to the north and to the south. Ultra new. We have some. There will be some. As you see, there are many ultra new stories. I will draw an ultra new story now. I will take a little bit time to go through this. And when you teach something which is new for people, you can start with saying what you're going to say. Then you can say it. Pro-opium-melanocortin is a molecule. Another molecule we talk about is beta-endorphin. It makes us happy and relaxed. Adenocorticotropic hormone is another one. It's a standard arthritis treatment. It's a Nobel Prize with it. Linked to the sun, as you'll see. Alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. This makes us brown. Let's go and look at that. This is the Nobel Prize winner for this molecule. Adenocorticotropic hormone man. He got the Nobel Prize already in 1950 for that. Now, let's go to the skin. Here I have drawn two skin cells, two different types. One is to the left, it's the keratinocytes. Most of those in the skin, most abundant cells in the skin, and the other one to the right is the melanocytes, the one that makes the melanocyte, makes the melanin, the brown color in the skin. So when the sun shines, it shines on the DNA. So you see the DNA here? Both stress and sun can act on that. That one acts on, there is a cell, there is a DNA piece, a gene called the P53 genes. About 10 years ago, everyone in the Radium Hospital who was doing cancer research was talking about P53 all the time. It's linked to cancer and many other things. What happens when this one gets the signal from the sun? Yeah, then it starts the production. The DNA in our genes start to produce pro-opiomelanocortin, POMC, POMC. Pro-opiomelanocortin is formed. That is a long protein molecule you can see here in blue and red and orange down. This is a large molecule, the pro-opiomelanocortin protein. It is divided into 3 pieces. The alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, the blue, goes to the melanocytes and makes them make brown color. The adenocorticotropic hormone and the beta endorphin both goes to the blood. The ACTCH acts against a lot of diseases, arthritis for instance. And what about the beta endorphin? Beta endorphin makes us feel good. It's the same hormone as it's opioid, and it makes you feel less pain. Makes women who are giving birth less pain. Therefore, during birth they get a lot of beta endorphin, and it gives us all kinds of pleasure. Why does it give pleasure to be in the sun? If solar exposure were unhealthy, we wouldn't get that one. I'm sure. We can make a comparison. If it was very painful to make children, we wouldn't have been here. For sure. There is a reason. There is simply a reason. There is a reason why we get beta endorphin by being in the sun. Most people get happy and are stimulated and so on and so forth. This shows beyond doubt that to be exposed to light and sun is healthy. Here you can see it. The proof of the beta endorphin is at the bottom. You can color it. And you see the skin surface after sun exposure is red, which shows there is beta endorphin made there. The happy peptide. It's a long molecule, complicated one. This is more or less the same picture as I showed before. Yes? If sun exposure were bad, repeat once more, the sun would not have given us a happy hormone. We would have been black. Black skin needs 6 times more sun to give enough vitamin D. So these are the 2 key reasons why we can say that sun exposure is good. Women and men. It's an interesting story. Women and men. Some people believe that Christianity brought women down. This is absolutely not true. Women were low in the society before Christianity came in the New Testament. A lot of women were involved in the whole story. They were the first one to go to the grave. Women told the story. So women are important. And I used to say that women are more important than men. There is no doubt about it. Why? Because the women have our babies 9 months in their body. This makes the women so important because they make our body, our babies, literally. So then evolution is so clever that it gives women a little bit more vitamin D by making their skin a little bit brighter than that of men. If you measure many, many men and many, many women, you'll see that on the average, women are a little bit brighter. We have a funny story where one of the old pharaohs, about 2,000 years BC, he was married to, of course, these people took the women they wanted, the pharaohs, and he has a wife on the picture that is brighter than himself. So there could be another reason for that. Could be that people turn more black, darker as we grow old, and the people and the men maybe choose young women, and the brightness of the skin would be tell something about the age. But I don't believe that. I think it's too little to say that. But the fact that they get more vitamin D by being a little bit more bright than men is no doubt important. The evolution wants to provide women with enough sun and vitamin D. So we have something called heliotherapy, light therapy. This is something you know about. We have two of the big guys. Hippocrates, he lived about 400 years BC, and he said that all studies in medicine should start with a study of how light interacts with humans. And he made on his home island Kos, he made the first outdoor sunbed, solarium, outdoor in the sun. Philostratus much later he came after Christ, and he claimed that all of the Olympian athletes, they had to take sun baths in order to strengthen their muscles and bones. We know now he was right. Both of these guys were right. So this is what I have done many years ago. Went out in different newspapers and say that the summer sun is healthy. I got a lot here. At the bottom you see two of my favorite students, my best students. One doctor to the left and a postdoc to the right. So we have been working a lot of vitamin D and sunbeds together. Here is the sun parabola. A parabola is two things. It's a geometrical figure, which is shown here. But it's also, you can say that the parable of that, if I want to tell you a complicated story, I can tell you a parable. I can tell you something resembling it. Resemblance, parabola. So this is a parabola. And if you have too little sunshine is along the x-axis here. Here is the sunshine, more and more and more. Here is ill health down, good health up. Too little vitamin D, too little sun gives you a lot of diseases. MS, influenza, schizophrenia, cancer, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, osteoporosis, rickets, autoimmune diseases. Too much sun gives you skin cancer and skin aging and immune suppression even. While little sun is just right, is just good in the middle. But what is good for different people is different. Dark-skinned people need to have much more. So the parabola will be shifted to the right for dark-skinned people. For light-skinned people, it will be shifted a bit like here. Let us look a little bit at a very famous work made by Lindqvist in southern Sweden. I know him, and he's an epidemiologist, and he looked at sun exposure and health. Among 29,000 women. Here is comparing women with different sun exposure attitudes, habits. And he compared those which didn't go to the sun, didn't want the sun. Those who had during their life moderate sun exposure, and those who have a lot of sun exposure. And this is complicated to read because it's too much magnitude, different magnitude on it. But nevertheless, I can tell you that all diseases shown here, it is the first here is how many surviving here, and CVD and some cancer and other things. And you see that all diseases get less and less high when you go from here to here to here. There is less disease on this, and you see. So the avoiding the sun makes the life shorter by several years. Here is the other one showing exactly the same, plotted on a different way. You see that avoiding the sun exposure always come back out. To avoid the sun exposure gives you more cancer, gives you more cardiovascular disease, it gives you a shorter life. So what he said is this. Those with the highest active sun exposure had a longer life could expect to live longer. Those avoiding sun exposure and not smoking at the same time had a similar life expectancy as those smoking with active sun exposure. And he said that avoiding sun is as dangerous as smoking. This was published 2 years ago. And many cancer societies were extremely angry at it. But you cannot change the data. He didn't want to find that data, it's just what he found. Just what he found. Here it is plotted in a more scientific way. Just you see that the death rate is highest for those who avoid the sun. Yes, sun, vitamin D, and sex. Sunbed experiment already in 1939 showed that sunbed exposures increased the testosterone in men by 120% after 5 days of strong sun exposure. Vitamin D is a relative to sex hormones. That's understandable. Sun exposure of experimental animals increase their amount of sex hormones. The rate of conception is largest in the autumn after a sunny summer. So there is some link between, yes, there is some kind of a link between sex and sun and also vitamin D. Message 1, the gain following more sun exposure is much larger than the loss. Message 2, morning, this we'll see later, morning and midday sun is the best time for sun exposure. Most vitamin D, best repair of cells, slowest cell division. It'll show that. So conclusion is enough sun provides health and well-being. Yes, let's go a little bit more. What do we do when the sun is too weak, October to March? Sunbeds is a question mark. They try to ban sunbeds now. It's awkward. The sunbeds, I have done research on that. We have 2 papers in international press on that. Sunbed exposure 2 times 10 minutes per week, very weak, gives a lot of vitamin D. It brings you up from a winter level to a summer level. Just 10 minutes times 2. It's very good. A photon is a photon. A light particle is the same, whether it comes from the sun or from a sunbed. Exactly the same. A light photon at 400 nanometers is exactly the same. No one can see the difference. I used to say to the Cancer Society, if you can prove to me that a photon coming from a sunbed is different from that from the sun, I will immediately provide you with a Nobel Prize, because I know some people in the Nobel Prize committee. So it's so enormous if you could show that, but it's not true. No one will get a Nobel Prize for that. So have more UVA. The difference is, a difference between sunbeds and sun is that the sunbeds have too much UVA. They have a little bit more UVA because it gives immediate browning. A photon of this was what I said. A photon is a photon. Okay. Here is, for instance, sunbed use in Denmark, and you can see that the sunbed use, when it went up, the cancer got rather down. It didn't get up. And here is the same in Norway. Here we see, this is a little bit scientific. I took it because it's from my own paper, showing that you get, the more sun you get, the more vitamin D you get. This is essentially what it shows. And here's the same. Yeah. Here are the sunbeds we used, and it gives, it shows you the spectrum of the sunbed, which is there. So it is a sunbed. Yes, and here is international study of the relationship between sunbed use and skin cancer, melanoma. You see, some of the investigations show that more people who do use the sunbeds you increase the risk of melanoma by a little bit, but also some shows the opposite. This is of course different for different collections of people for the studies. This is what I think the people who made this one. Actually, I made this, but the people who did the different, the main studies behind this. Here is what is in Norway. In Norway, the melanoma incidence both in women and men below 50 years is the upper curves. It has gone down all the time from 1989 to now, while the sunbed use has increased immensely. Sunbed use is this one, goes up, up, up. And at the same time, the melanoma has decreased. So it's difficult to say that the sunbeds are the reason for melanoma in the young people. Young is below 50 years. So when is sun safest? Is it before noon? It is before noon. It is not in the afternoon. Again, these cancer people, they say, oh, I'm a cancer man myself, but they say that things that are wrong. And it's not possible to teach them things because they have said it once. They don't want to change what they have said once. But the science is this. It's before noon, but don't get burned. That is the message I agree with everyone on. Here is the proof of it. It has been done experiments with mice. And we know that mice have the best, fastest replication, cell division in the skin they have in the nighttime. And they have the poorest repair also in the nighttime. But mice are night animals. And if we translate that story to humans, we see that humans are the opposite. We have the best repair early in the morning. And also we have the replication is highest early in the morning. So this is a good thing to have high replication, slow replication. Slow replication means that the cells have good time to repair the damage. Both of these things show clearly that the safest time to get sun exposure is for humans in the morning. For mice, it is in the evening, because they are night animals. And here you can see, this is cancer experiments by this. If they get the sun exposure AM in the night, they get much more cancer of the skin. We cannot do that, of course, with humans than they get in the day. You see? Same as for normal. UVB midday, UVA in the morning. Yes? Here you can see how differently this is. It is so that the UVB that makes the vitamin D is halved already at 3 o'clock or in the morning at 8:30 or something. While the other way, the skin cancer, melanoma skin cancer, you have chance to get all the time out until 6 o'clock. So this, if you take both these things together, it shows that the morning sun until 12 o'clock is the best sunny time. Health from the sun and sunbeds, more than vitamin D, more. Here we have health from the sun and light and UV. 2 molecules I mentioned for you, carbon monoxide, CO and NO. This is new stuff now. Ultraviolet radiation and cardiovascular diseases. Sun and blood pressure, let's look at that. The sun and blood pressure, there are many things done on both types of blood pressure. You see that it is lowest in the summer, highest in the winter. So the blood pressure varies with the sun. The blood pressure varies with the sun exposure. Now, evolution tells us that sun is good for us. And there is 8 reasons why to talk about that. 8 reasons to say that for sure. You see, it's not only 1, but it's 8. I think I've kept on almost 1 hour now. So how long time do I have? 2 minutes. Yeah. So. Sure. So 20 minutes more. We don't go in depth here, but I can tell you for sure that all these number 8 make important contributions to say that sun exposure, light exposure is good. This one we have seen. Health from the sun is more than vitamin D, nerve cells. Here is about the vitamin D. You can see that the vitamin D, you don't need to be afraid to get too much vitamin D because you don't get more after 30 minutes. You can see on the lower curve there. That's the reason why the reason for that is that we have a limited amount of 7-dihydrocholesterol in the skin so that we cannot make too much vitamin D because that's how it is. And we have this is again a story of sunbeds. And you can see that the sunbed would give you much more vitamin D than the sun. The sun can convert only up to 20% of the 700 hydrocholesterol, while the sunbed can convert all the way up to 70%. So sunbeds would be able to give, if they had the right color, 295 nanometers, they would give an enormous amount of vitamin D by short exposures. Sun and sunbeds is small, not in small, should be in small, not erythromogenic doses, give little skin cancer, and they protect. Here you see the melanoma in men and women. No, in this case it is in men. You can see that people who have indoor work, from doctors and teachers and so on, they have much more melanoma than outdoor workers that have been much in the sun. For instance, farmers and fishermen and so on in the old times. This is made before 1980, at a time when farmers were working outside. So you see that to work outside protects you from skin cancer, for sure. The strength of the solar radiation varies through the years. When you're about that, we have seen. Sun and flu, that we have done ourselves. Flu comes in a period, in the whole world, flu is most abundant, most likely to get in the winter and spring, early spring. So there is a direct relationship between sun and flu. So we have a very interesting story about light and life. Very interesting one. People don't know about that, but I know about it because I'm interested in history. Justinian was a very famous guy. He had a very wonderful wife, queen, this one, but whatever. She was a terrible woman. All the important queens in history are terrible. So, but they were powerful, actually. They were probably more powerful than the emperors themselves because they had the power over the emperor in the bedroom. Yeah, and nevertheless, there was something called Justinian's pandemia, which happened in the year 541 to 2. It was similar to the Black Death, Svartedøden, here in Norway. It was enormous. Up to 10,000 people were killed every day in Constantinople, the capital. And it killed altogether 5 million people. What is the reason for it? Lack of sun. Lack of sun. Because you can see 4 years before, there was an enormous volcano eruption. And it is known that there was a summer, which was a winter, for years afterwards. That is because when you have an enormous volcano eruption, then the sun, there will be no sunshine. There will be so much ash all over the world, at least a large distance from the eruption, that there will no sun come through. So it will be a winter in the summer, winter in the summer. Same reason why the dinosaurs disappeared about 50 million years ago, 65 million years ago. It was because of a big stone that fell down in the ocean, made a lot of dust and water vapor. So it was dark, no green plants, and big animals couldn't survive. Dinosaurs succumbed. But this pandemia here is related to a volcanic eruption. It's a winter throughout the whole year. When you have little sun, you have this terrible pandemia which killed so much. It clearly shows there. Epigenetics, I think maybe we shouldn't go into that. A little bit about the epigenetics. Some people, we know that our genes are there. Nothing can happen with them. We have them inherited from the mother and father, the genes. But modern research shows that if you eat certain things or do certain things, you can actually change your genes a little bit, because something can lay on top of the genes a little bit, and it can make some more work more and some genes work less. This means that the whole biology can be changed by epigenetic factors. So gene expression of vitamin D. This is a difficult story. Yeah, this one we can have. About 2,000 genes are affected by vitamin D. 2,000 genes. Some of the proteins in our body we get a little bit more of, some we get less of if we are in the sun. You see? It's important. 2,000 genes is quite a number. Vitamin D receptor gene are also important for sun to work. When vitamin D flows in the blood, it flows to places where you have vitamin D receptors, only there. So it shows where we have them. Where do we have vitamin D receptors in the body? Where do we need vitamin D? Here, here, here. Essentially all tissues in our body needs vitamin D, not at least the head. Vitamin D tumors which have a lot of vitamin D receptors, they are less able to kill people than tumors with no vitamin D receptors. You can see here for melanomas, see here, that those without, they die very early, people with melanoma without, and those with high VDR receptors for the vitamin D. Also, you can say for sure that vitamin D protects those. Yes, brain, what about brain? Brain has a lot of vitamin D receptors. Sun and dementia. The dementia is more common in the north than in the south. I've said that. What level of vitamin D did the first humans have? They had naked person working outside with black skin in Africa have 120 to 150 nanomoles in the blood. We have by chance 50 to 60, so we have much too little. I have calculated that if you let people get twice as much in the sun as they are now, then we will have double the number of skin cancers from deaths from about up to 500. But we would save 10 times more people from other cancers. You have a little loss and a big deal. So you have a lot. Here is what has been, and you can see here that we, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, here is an important thing what vitamin D does. It protects our chromosomes. Women with a lot of vitamin D, this is a woman experiments too, about 50, 60-year-old women in the US. They had longer chromosomes. Their chromosomes were more stable than those of people who had little vitamin D. This means that people who had been much in the sun had, on this way to calculate, 5 years longer lifetime than those who had not been in the sun. Again, CO and NO, partly made by the sun. I have to go fast now because we have not much time. Yeah, this shows, okay. Diabetes as for MS, yeah. Here are two molecules I wanted to get to at the very end here. Newest of the new is resistin and filagrin. Resistin is a molecule linked to insulin resistance. It's not a good molecule to have. It is trouble for those with diabetes. So the sun reduces the amount of resistin in the blood. That is a good thing. And yeah, low levels are good. Resistin will be degraded by the sun. Filagrin is another one. This is a filament-making molecules in the skin. You haven't heard about it, I think. But it is a UV absorber. It is a natural sunscreen. And filagrin, you have more mutations on filagrin the further to north you go. This shows that we get more sun when we need more sun. This is another story than the story about skin coloring. Too much complicated to take all this stuff. Yes, yeah. It was just I meant to, if we have good time, to repeat. So then I will end up here having a bright days here in Norway. So I will end up with the same poem as I started with. You should always, according to rhetorics, you should end up the talk winding it up between, in the book you have a hardcover at the end, hardcover in the beginning with a hardcover. O humans, what is life? It is I, the incessant light, the sunny sky, the fertile earth, the days so bright is I. You can ask me questions.
Pass the microphone for questions.
when we go to vitamin D, I think I can say for sure that if you don't get answer from me, you will probably not get answer from anyone else in this country. Yeah, come along.
Thank you for your talk. My name's Neil Haig from the UK. I work in LED lighting. I'm very interested in what you've said about sunbed lamps. Historically, they were whatever light source we could get, and we couldn't control the range of UVB and UVA very well. I'm working in a field now where we can do tunable LED spectrums in the UVA, and I wondered whether there's a correlation or data on which specific wavelengths across the UVA, UVB band we could be choosing to maximise the benefit and minimise the damage.
Definitely, I can say exactly. And a famous guy have been saying this, what you say now, a long time. I have been saying it, that one should be able to tune the color or the wavelengths of the sunbeds. That was very difficult as long as one had a mercury arc behind this and this. Then the sun, and also the sunbed users, the sunbed saloons, they want to have something which makes you brown immediately. The reason for that is women, especially also men, when they come out from the sunbed, they look at themselves in the mirror and they, wow, I got brown. That is the UVA, and that is the thing I don't think is good. I think the UVA is not good because that can give melanoma. The good thing is the UVB, the vitamin D producing light is the UVB. It is around 300 nanometers. UVA is 360 nanometers. And actually I have 2 papers in the literature about why do we get brown out of the UVA. 2 types of browning, one short type of immediate browning, which you get immediately, called immediate pigment darkening, and another one that comes after a week or after 2-3 days after sun exposure. That is called permanent pigmentation, and that one also is the same as that one which gives you the vitamin D. So the permanent pigmentation you get out of UVB around 300 nanometers, that's my answer to you. If you want to have a sunbed that people get brown immediately from, you make a UVA one, but then you have to warn them, maybe you get melanoma out of this one. So it's very interesting. Why do we get this immediate? Why does nature provide us with an immediate way to get brown when it's sun? I think that was in the old times when we lived under equator. Then it was very good to have something turning brown immediately when you ran out from the shade into to hunting in the sun. That is exactly that reason, because it protects the folate in the blood, the immediate pigment darkening. Yes, yeah.
You mentioned that vitamin D, of course, is so important, and we need lots of vitamin D.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think human body needs a certain range. Each of us needs vitamin D to be in a certain range as many other parameters. The same like with the light.
Yeah.
So we don't need too much. We need exactly twice 10 minutes, as you said.
Yeah, but this was, I've shown that in 2 of my slides. One was a parabola that said that too much is bad for skin cancer, first of all. And too little is also very bad. Yeah, and the right is right. But we need more vitamin D than we have on the average in Norway, because the Africans, when they work outdoor in Africa, which people did millions of years, at least 5 million years, they need much more. So that we need to make the average level of vitamin D go up from 50 nanomolars in the average in Norway up to 100. Double it, that's for sure. That is more or less true for everyone. But it's a little, here we come to it. Some people have very rare diseases called sarcomas. Not sarcomas, sarcoidosis. And they have disturbances in the vitamin D synthesis. So they have to be careful with too much vitamin D. Yeah.
You just answered my question about what is a normal vitamin D level, or what should one aim for when you go to the GP?
Absolutely. We should aim for to have a natural one, which humans had in Africa. It's about 100 and a little bit more. So the Vitamin D Council, which are the experts in the whole world, they discuss this over and over and over. Some say that 100 and some say that 150 is good. Some say that 90 is good. They discuss it. I think the truth is that we are different. But if you say 100, we are fairly on the average. Yes?
Thank you. I'm asking about how much of our bodies we need to expose, because you're talking about like half an hour.
I can tell you exactly. I can tell you exactly. The amount of vitamin D you get is proportional to the body surface you expose to the sun. Some people say that's enough to expose the hands and the face. That is definitely not true. You have to expose somewhat more. And then when you get up to a high level, you can have that relatively high level. We have done that for about 5-6 weeks. So the half time of the vitamin D is over the order of 5 weeks.
And I've also heard or read that we shouldn't wear sunglasses because we're not getting...
You shouldn't wear sunglasses?
Yes, because it's stopping the vitamin D getting through our system.
No, it's not. This is not true. I think you can definitely wear sunglasses because one of the sensitive organs of the body of the humans is, in fact, the eyes. So you don't... the only thing that the very dark sunglasses does is that it interacts with the visible light so that you get less of the day adjusting. That's another lecture going to be here about how the days and night is adjusted by light. So the dark sunglasses will interact with that. But with respect to the one I have talked about now, you can wear glasses, so that's good. Because the main damage in there are two types of damage in the eye. One is to the retina, which is very bad, which also is made partly by UV, and it's the other one to the cornea, to the surface of you get snow blind, and these sunglasses will prevent that for sure.
Dr. Moan, when we don't have enough light, we can also take vitamin D supplements.
Definitely.
But I heard at some point that vitamin D through supplements has some kind of different effect than the one coming from sunlight, and it can be toxic in some ways.
This is a large discussion in the literature, a large discussion. But most people I agree with most scientists here, that it is the same, because whether you get it from the sun or from the food, it has to go to the liver. It has to go to the liver to make calcidiol. From the liver, it has to go to the whole body, especially to the kidneys, to make calcitriol, which is the active hormone. So it has to go that way, whether you get it from the food. But it can be some difference between vitamin D in fat, encapsulated in fat stuff, like in cod liver oil, and pure vitamin D, because what you get it together with may have something to do with the uptake in the stomach. So the vitamin D can be a little bit different depending on how it is. But I think the one you get from the sun and the one you get from the is equivalent. But the vitamin D2, which is cheaper, and people use that for fortification of food. This is maybe as weak as a third or a quarter of vitamin D3, which we make by the sun and cod liver oil.
Thank you. We'll have to stop the question.